Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to focus on this entire docudrama that we are witnessing unfold via various student body, which are again motivated organizations. We'll try and get to the bottom of that also, politically and otherwise, who are trying to raise a whole ruckus. The straightforward question that we're asking is this perhaps the first of the many efforts that will come to try and derail the Modi Juggernaut ahead of Lok Sabha 2024? Without wasting time, let's go straight across to author, actor, and who's now just brought out his own autobiography in multiple languages. He's joining us on this Right Stand exclusive, Kabir Bedi. Kabir ji, namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Let's take the bull by the horns. You've called this gutter journalism, this BBC docuseries.
I have a problem with this documentary. Firstly, because it tries to paint a picture of India in religious turmoil. Religious turmoil has marked the tenure of Narendra Modi. Firstly, that's not true. People from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, Maharashtra to Meghalaya, the vast majority of Hindus and Muslims are living in peace together. Yes, there have been incidents. Yes, there have been extremists who've done a few things, but except for one sort of mini riot in Delhi, there was not one major riot in the last 8 years. And therefore, to paint a picture of Indian religious turmoil is false. However, people are entitled to do that. What I object to is the manner in which it's been done. They have taken a narrative to prove their point of religious turmoil, gone back to what they presume to be the origins of Godhra, and arrogated to themselves the right to decide who is right and who is wrong and who's guilty and who is not guilty, completely ignoring what the Indian courts have decided. And this is done in such an inflammatory way that, you take the tear-jerking reactions of victims and you make them feel that some great injustice has been done to them that has not been addressed by the Indian courts. And, ultimately, who creates riots? It is hotheads, it is extremists, it is fanatics looking for reasons. This gives reason to people like that to feel that my community has been aggrieved, I must do something about it. It is very inflammatory, very biased, and therefore, I regard this as something that really should be banned. Whether the government have banned it or not, I believe it should be banned, because I do believe in freedom of speech. However, freedom of speech is not something that comes as a fundamental absolute right. Nobody has a right to shout fire, fire in a crowded theater and cause a rampage. So there are limitations. The only limitation I have on freedom of speech is incitement to violence. And I believe this documentary incites people to violence because it broadcasts falsehoods based on utterly false assumptions.
But Kabirji, this is not the first time. The BBC in the past has had run-ins with governments of the past with Bharat because they've been called out for running implied narratives and agendas against our country, and also coming in from a very, very imperialistic mindset. So then did it surprise you, this documentary?
I have a lot of respect for the BBC because of the quality of their programming. I am absolutely shocked that somebody in the BBC sanctioned a program like this, which is so slanted, so biased, so inflammatory, that they should lose their jobs for it. The BBC is a publicly funded corporation. It's supposed to broadcast programs for the good of people, for the benefit of society, to enrich the lives of society, entertain them, inform them. This doesn't do anything with race relations between Hindus and Muslims in England, nor does it do anything out here. Hindu-Muslim relations have been on a very even keel for the last decade, largely. And it takes one incident or one flashpoint to trigger something, and the hotheads take over and they incite people and riots happen. Why the BBC thought it fit to do this, I don't know. Okay. Everyone has a right to make any documentary they want on any subject they want. But why they chose to do this, it is actually character assassination of our Prime Minister. A man who has been Prime Minister for, so many years, almost eight, 9 years now, and a man who's been re-elected with a handsome majority, who talks about Sabka Vikas, Sabke Saath. Yes, he's a proud Hindu, but that does not make him anti-Muslim.
Exactly.
I do not believe there's any policies of the government that are directly anti-Muslim. Now, this can be argued by some that oppose him, etc., but I don't believe so. Therefore, I feel this documentary is destructive, potentially destructive to peace. It is a shoddy piece of journalism. I call it gutter journalism. To paraphrase the words of Mahatma Gandhi, it is a drain inspector's report.
Very well said there, well articulated, Kabirji. But there are those who believe that the government should not have blocked it, and by blocking it, there's actually got more attention and traction. Where do you stand there? Because we're seeing so much of ruckus in campuses, and it's similar political outfits. It's the con-left ecosystem.
This is true in a limited sense. But if people imagine that by the government ignoring this documentary, it would simply go away, that is simply not true. The entire anti-Modi brigade would have made a meal out of it. They would have broadcast it from the rooftops. They would have made the biggest hangama out of it. The government has to take a principled stand against this. They have to convey their displeasure. Yeah. Whether such bans are effective or not in the digital age, when everyone can see it through WhatsApp messages, through VPNs, etc., is not the point.
Right.
The government has to take a position. And if the government says this is offensive to us, it questions the integrity of our Supreme Court's judgments, and therefore we will not let this be shown, I am entirely with them on this. I don't agree with them on all matters. We can discuss that separately.
Yes.
But on this matter, I'm entirely with them, because silence on their part would have been seen as an admission of guilt. And that, I think, would have been wrong. So I think it is good that they reacted.
You make a fair point and a strong argument there, but is it also a concern for you that a lot of these students who are perhaps participating in these protests and insisting that they have the freedom of speech, forgetting the restrictions, etc., they are also young, impressionable, a lot of them born after 2002. But could this also be material for radicalization and polarization?
Well, for one, let me say, I think in one sense, the BBC documentary has succeeded with cheap sensationalism by fomenting such kind of agitations in India. So in that sense, in a very below the belt way, they have got ratings. They have created a certain audience for themselves. I'm a Democrat. I believe that students on the campuses, if they are opposed to Prime Minister Modi, have every right to protest, every right to show their displeasure against any policy of this government that they don't agree with. However, I do believe, and I don't question their patriotism, I do believe that they are rallying around the wrong cause. Because this cause is not a cause of Mr. Modi versus the rest. It's a cause that if anyone believes in communal harmony, if anyone wants to protect the peace between the communities in India, nobody should encourage that. If anyone says you should not question the fundamental judgments of our courts made over years of litigation, respect what the courts have said. Don't arrogate to yourself on the testimony of a man like Jack Straw, who was the architect of the Iraq war, who said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and sent hundreds of British boys to their deaths. A totally discredited witness. Do not give strength to that. So, whatever your opinions on the campuses about Narendra Modi, you're entitled to that opinion. Do not rally around this cause because it is an anti-India, anti-communal cause that you should not back and you should not give any air or energy to. Your patriotism deserves a better platform, is what I say to the students.
Kabirji, my final question to you. Do you believe that this is one of the first of many attacks that will come from this con-left ecosystem? to corner Prime Minister Narendra Modi on this anti-Muslim, Musalman Khatre mein hai narrative under PM Modi. Do you believe it's a failed obsession since 2002? Because he's only risen, become stronger. But is this the first of many in the run-up to Lok Sabha 2024?
India has many major problems to be addressed. I think Prime Minister Modi has addressed most of them in an incredibly creative, dynamic, visionary way. Let's not get into a list of all his achievements on the economic front, or the list of measures that he's taken to improve India's standing in the world. The only platform that the anti-Modi brigade has is this communal angle. And they work it to death as though it's the only problem in India. They make it seem as though there's nothing else that matters except the communal problem, and Modi's root all communal issues. You know, in a country of 1.2 billion people, there are going to be incidents. There are going to be cow vigilantes that do things that are heinous and unspeakable and deserve the most severe punishment. There's going to be people that do things at the state level, at the regional level, at various outfits, right-wing outfits, etc. How do you lay that on the door of Prime Minister Modi? You know, this is the question. Every crime in the country can't be laid at the door of the Prime Minister. And therefore, I think the single one-point narrative that they have to oppose Prime Minister Modi is worn threadbare. Because nothing in his statements or his actions show that he's anti-Muslim. I think that needs to be seen with respect. If he really had an anti-Muslim agenda, there could have been mayhem. He could have launched God knows how many strikes in various ways against them. It's not happened. It's not happened. He's talked of harmony, he's talked of brotherhood, he's talked of all of us being together as one nation. So I think this is a totally single point agenda, which is a weak way to try and attack Prime Minister Modi. But fact is, they've got nothing else to attack him on.
You say they have nothing else to attack him on. Kabirji, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much. And congratulations on the language editions of your autobiography, also out in multiple Indian languages. We wish we can speak soon and more often. Thank you very much. Let's move on, ladies and gentlemen. Let's open this up to our other panelists who've been listening and who've been also waiting. Another bit to derail the 2024 Modi Juggernaut is what we are asking. And is it the first of many? Ishkaran Bhandari, lawyer, is with us. Uday Mahurkar, the Chief Information Commissioner, with us. Rajinder Kumar, former Special IB Director, with us. And Sushant Sarif, Senior Fellow, ORF, with us. Namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you very much. Rajinder Kumarji is joining us from the US of A. So, Rajinderji, let me ask you, you've borne the brunt of it for nearly 20 years. Still haven't escaped it. But let me ask you, why this raking up of 2002 every time? And is this a deliberate ploy? कि उल्टी गिनती शुरू लोकसभा की तो चलो let's start from here.
See, this is the most opportunate time for a particular group to project India in bad light, and it also has something to do with the internal politics of UK also. So both ways, you would understand why in UK also they want to discredit the current Prime Minister, who unfortunately happens to be and of an Indian origin, and who is also a Hindu. So they are trying to discredit him also by attacking the Hinduism, and more importantly in India. It is the old story which I have gone through this documentary. See, there are two things. One is, I will analyze it in two ways. One is that what was the cause of such a ferocity of the riots. Second is, what was the role of the administration? Was there a connivance or in any way some incitement, etc. So this is the issue. Now I'll go to the second part first. The second part is this: that a horrific incident took place on 27th February 2002. And this horrific incident, it was it was a well-planned incident. It was very well organized. And the intention was exactly to cause riots in India. In fact, a subsequent report by a sister agency in India indicated that Dawood Ibrahim was specially facilitated by ISI in Pakistan. And he could speak to his comrades in India and told them that yes, they have done a good work and those who have suffered, they will be compensated. But we have to continue to see that this place keep on burning. I'll just give you one small fact which people don't know. The most important fact is that on I think 20th or 21st January, American Library in Calcutta was attacked. There was a terrorist attack by Aftab Ansari, a notorious LED this thing. Now, he was at that time in Dubai. From Dubai, he claimed this attack and said in that attack, that was at that time West Bengal as a communist government, that we will burn Gujarat now. It will be the turn of Gujarat to be burnt. So there was a pre-planned conspiracy was going on to create problem in India and starting it from Gujarat. So this was the one thing. Now comes to the administrative. After this incident, horrific riots broke out in several places in Gujarat. So my only point will be that the administration tried to control it as far as possible. But there was so much of anger against the persons, the community which has perpetrated these riots, and there is a reason for that. The reason is that if you will study the history of Gujarat, in Gujarat riots have been taking place for 550 years. First riot took place in 1513 in Ahmedabad. So the thing is that in Gujarat, the mafia, Muslim mafia, liquor mafia, illicit liquor mafia was dominating. And it has made the life of the Hindus, particularly of poorer people, small and downtrodden people, their life was made hell by this mafia. Their girls were picked, they were kidnapped, they were assaulted, everything was done. So this was the scenario in which this incident had taken place. So in this incident, when this incident taken place, I was myself surprised to see that groups of 20,000, 50,000 people getting together. There was no government inspiration to it. The only thing was that the mobs were so strong that it was very difficult for police to control it. And the first thing is that most of the BBC documentary is based on Shri Kumar's narrative. Now, if the falsehood of BBC documentary comes out very clearly from the first point itself, Shri Kumar was not the additional DG intelligence at that time. He was the additional DG of Gujarat Armed Police. And instead of guiding his forces to control the crowd, he was roaming around in the offices. He came to my office also.
So you're saying that the premise itself is wrong. The people who have spoken to and how they have been labelled also is wrong. Everything, a lot of things are wrong. In fact, even the trigger, what started the burning of the two bogies of the train of car sevaks or Hindu pilgrims coming back, that itself is glossed over. Even series 2, Uday Mahurkarji, even where they talk about CA, where they talk about the riots, they don't talk about what they did on Republic Day, what they did in the national capital. They don't talk about the fact that the visiting dignitary, there was a deliberate attempt, how it was pre-planned. They gloss over how cops were pushed over walls, how an intelligence officer's son was brutally chopped to pieces and killed, brutalized. All of that is not spoken about it. So clearly it's a slanted narrative. But my question is, do you believe that there are many more to come? And is this a failed obsession? Is this a failed formula? Would you agree with Kabir Bedi who says इनके पास और कोई चारा नहीं और कोई एंगल नहीं है कम्युनल के अलावा?
You see, Prime Minister Modi has been there for almost 8 years now. He has done an extremely good job in most areas. And let me tell you one thing. When it comes to minorities, the minority policies, the way they have been implemented after this government took over, have been much better than the past. The nation should ponder over this. The minority policies of this government are far better, the implementation is far better than the previous governments. So, when it comes to progressive things like education, scholarship, so this entire narrative in some respects will continue because BBC, New York Times, Economist, they regularly come with anti-Modi stories, anti-India stories. We have seen over the last 8 years, so they will continue with their job. But the point is, this narrative is not going to stick. It's a false narrative. In the case of Gujarat riots, I think nothing more needs to be said because the highest court of the country exonerated the Prime Minister. It has been proved beyond doubt how activists who were hand in glove with such media entities who were trying to defame the government, trying to false witnesses were used to prove their false charges. And there are stories which now conclusively prove that this entire narrative was created by a section of people who are against a certain ideology, against certain people associated with that ideology, and who were hand in glove with these media channels also, media houses. So I think this narrative will continue because they have an agenda. But otherwise, it is not going to stick. Anand.
20 साल स्टिक नहीं हुआ, अभी कहां से स्टिक होगा? But why persist with it? And is this now a global combine which is happening? Is this a this entire con left ecosystem,
wokish ecosystem? One thing.
Is this a desperate attempt now?
The politics which this country witnessed, Anand, over the last in the first 60 years of its birth, from 1947 onwards, the one major feature which afflicted the system was minority appeasement, Muslim appeasement, at the cost of Hindu rights, at the cost of majority rights. Now that whole narrative is being corrected. There is a course correction going on. The crass appeasement which we saw is not there. Whereas when it comes to minority education, development policies regarding minorities, they are being implemented well. So they should realize that there is a course correction now. What India had witnessed in the first 60 years, was Muslim appeasement policies at the cost of Hindu rights. Article 30 of the Constitution, what is it? It is also loaded in favor of minorities, particularly Muslim community. So, what we are seeing is a course correction, and I think it will be better if these media houses, foreign media houses, go into the past of this country and then evaluate how Mr. Modi is. I don't support.
It doesn't seem like they want to do it.
The section of people who condemn the entire Muslim community. Let me tell you one thing.
Allow me to just take this to Sushant Sareen and Nishkaran Bhandari. Sushant Sareen, they just don't seem to want to do it. They are actually looking for partners who will try and push this narrative. It suits them. This is a classic divide and rule policy at play again via propaganda.
Yeah, which is exactly the point, and the only point of disagreement with Mr. Mahurkar is that when he, I think he still harbors some hope that you can talk some sense into these Western media outlets. When you can't, because they are not doing this out of ignorance. They are not doing this because they don't have enough knowledge. They are doing this because it is part of an insidious, sinister agenda, which they are plugging. And the British are past masters at. Look, the British have never been friends of India. Never. I don't know why. Just like, in this country, there is complete, I don't want to use the word, but there's complete lack of understanding of what Pakistan is. There is utter lack of understanding of what Britain stands for. And not for now, for the last 300 years. They have always demonized the Hindu community, number one. Number two, the Brits have always shown enmity towards India. Whether it's the 65 war, whether it is, tearing away Gilgit-Baltistan from India, whether it is partition itself, whether it is, the subsequent events which happened. And just today, one newspaper has published that the British Army and the Pakistan Army are holding a major conference in which they're going to discuss strategic stability with Kashmir at its center. What is the role that Britain has to play in that?
Correct.
Pray tell me. You look at virtually everything, and yet if we have not understood that simple fact of life, and we keep talking about, in a nostalgic manner and romanticize what our relationship with Britain has been. Our relationship with Britain has been one of rapacity by the Brits, of loot, plunder, pillage. That's what our relationship has been. Now, some idiot will say that, no, but the British built, the railways.
लूटने के लिए तो
They
बना है.
didn't do it for our sake. They did it for their sake, right? Nothing they did in India was for our sake. That we benefited from it was to our credit, not anything that the Brits did. So, I think, one, we need to be very clear about it. Secondly, look, I am a little conflicted after hearing all my colleagues, and I have a lot of respect for somebody like Mr. Rajendra Kumar, because I happen to know what a stellar role he has played while in service. And of course, it was good to hear Mr. Kabir Bedi as well. So I'm a little conflicted because, at one level we have to recognize that, we made a big song and dance about this documentary which would have been ignored. But I also take the point that this documentary is with a political agenda, and it is with an agenda to incite violence against Hindus, not just or incite violence in India, communal violence, but also incite violence against Hindus in Britain.
Yeah.
And we have seen from what happened in Leicester, we've seen the kind of role that the British police played, we've seen the kind of role that the British politics played out there, and how they demonized the Hindu community, even though the violence was perpetrated by the Pakistanis, right? So we've seen all of that. And yet, if we are not waking up, then there's a problem. But there is one thing which is extremely serious about this so-called documentary, which is, utter rubbish otherwise. For example, it is not just about the Gujarat riots. It is not just about demonizing Mr. Modi. It is about demonizing the Hindu community. And it is, for example, they take the whole issue of Kashmir. Not a single mention of jihadist terrorism in Kashmir.
Correct.
Not a single mention.
Correct.
Right? But they show that this is Hindu chauvinism, Hindu supremacy, Hindu majoritarianism, which is at play in Kashmir right now. Did these guys go to Kashmir and see what is? Now, if your point of reference is Arundhati Roy, the Republic of One, and then you say that you made an objective documentary, then I don't know what to say about these guys. The kind of viciousness which they have shown, the kind of unsubstantiated allegations, look, did they go through the Supreme Court judgment? The multiple cases and scrutinies through which, the then Chief Minister and now Prime Minister went through, under a hostile government, under a court which was not exactly very friendly or disposed very friendly to them, which set up inquiry committee after inquiry committee. If after all of that scrutiny, you could not find a shred of evidence against the man and still you want to hang him, then clearly there is something else which is at work. Now, will this play a role going forward in the elections? I would be a little surprised.
Right.
But I think we need to be extremely careful, because as you go forward, you will see a lot of this activity taking place. And it's already showing.
This is something which
kind of thing which happened during CAA. You started inciting people in universities. You started agitating crowds out there. And the opposition will, of course, want to play with fire on this particular issue, because that is the only thing which they have.
Even now, Sushant ji, in the campuses, it is the SIO, Student Islamic Organization, which again finds its roots from the Jamaat and is also sister to Simi, and empathizes with the PFI. These are the students who are going there and creating this agitation, along with, of course, the left, which has got nothing else. It's reduced to 2 or 3 campuses in the country and does not have mandates, and where it is what it's doing is only rabble-rousing. For them,
Anand,
growth, stability, order does not seem to work. And there are many who have written about it that they want where it is chaos, where there is penury, where there is rabble-rousing, because that's where they would thrive. Ishkaran Bhandari has not spoken. He's listened very carefully.
Before Ishkaran comes in, just a small thing.
Yeah.
You're right that these are 2 or 3 or maybe half a dozen campuses. Maybe about 500, 1,000, 2,000 students at best. But look, it's not just about those guys agitating. It's the ecosystem which
Correct.
comes into play.
Correct.
Because look at the way a small incident is telescoped and then blown out of proportion to show that, India is undergoing patani what kind of pogrom. But look at the United States, for example. Look at the fact that virtually every day there is a mass killing taking place somewhere. People can't walk on streets. There is robbery and thievery happening in front of everybody's eyes. And you have this wokeism out there. Now, should we not be agitating about that?
Correct.
Should we not be pointing
but
out
that
that
itself,
US is the dysfunctional system?
That itself exposes not just the ecosystem. The ecosystem stands threadbare, and the threads of this ecosystem, till where and how they are all connected, and how vast this net is, that also stands exposed today, and people are seeing that. Ishkaran Bhandari, thank you for your patience. Please take your time and make your point.
Anand, since I'm speaking last, I'll carry forward with what I agree with the previous panelists, and on one point I fundamentally disagree with the previous panelist. On the point of agreement. The point of agreement is BBC did a complete propaganda piece. The point of agreement is that it's a left loony propaganda which is targeting probably both Britain's Prime Minister as well as the Indian Prime Minister. The Supreme Court has ruled it. The government in UPA 2004 to 2014 was hardly friendly to the Chief Minister. They tried everything at their resources to try to pin some blame on him, and they did not succeed. The Supreme Court has upheld all of it. The last word has been given by the courts and also the people of India in 2002 election, 7 election, 12 election, 14 national election and 19 election.
Okay.
So that is all very clear. And the bias in Western media, I do not think a more apt example than New York Times article by a food critic, where the food critic says, my editors asked me to choose 10 essential Indian recipes. But what the food critic writes is, India is currently struggling with a powerful wave of Hindu nationalism that threatens Muslims with a deadly violence. This news is hard to ignore even in a food story. So I don't understand if New York Times can publish this in a food story and the writer can very happily say that it's difficult to describe an egg curry without talking about the Prime Minister Modi. That shows the level of their sanity. Where I fundamentally disagree is, I think by 2004, everybody had understood the Streisand effect, where Barbara Streisand objected to a photograph of California coast, which had her house. Only 6 people had seen that photograph. She went to court to ban it. 4 lakh people downloaded the photograph. If people still don't understand, the government had many options. The minute they went for the blockage, every person who had not seen it, and there is a lobby which will want to show it, would have thought, has BBC found a smoking gun? What has happened that the government has used this as machinery? Just the curiosity in a thing banned or blocked. In fact, it's blocked. I don't think so. It's been banned.
It's
so
been
that
blocked.
is even a half is being blocked, right? Not banned. So if you have just blocked it, not banned it legally, probably people can show it also. Not in the campuses, not in the universities. But doing this, when you know how social media plays, and also see the unlimited amount of publicity now BBC has got. What stops them from doing a piece tomorrow, or New York Times or the Time magazine to develop on this? The solution you found has only made the problem worse, is my opinion on how they have dealt with it on social media. And that has been proved in innumerable examples in the past of people who deal with social media. If they had just ignored it, 2002 is a dead and buried politically and legal issue. I don't think so. An issue 20-year-old would have had any resonance, any curiosity, any viewership in India. But by blocking it, it has, of course, created enough interest in it that I think the government has created this problem for this issue also, and further such pieces by Western media.
Well, there are opinions about this. There are other people too who have espoused the same point of view as you, Ishkaran, where they've said you should have just let it be. But there are those who say that had this video not been flagged off, it would have been used for far more nefarious means. And as more people are watching this video, there are so many more people who are also now going through go through the Supreme Court judgment. They're also going to now say that there is what is considered as gold standards of journalism are nothing but pushing agenda pushers of a particular narrative which is still steeped in imperialism and a colonialistic design. So that's the counter argument. I'm not saying either side is true. I'm just saying both sides exist. That's what I'm trying to say. Yes, Ishwara.
Anand, I'll just add 10 seconds. That is an intellectual's answer. Social media, nobody goes through Supreme Court judgments. We have all seen that. All they see is why has it been banned, and let us see what has happened.
On the same social media, the Supreme Court judgments are also being put out by a huge
People
number of
don't do
influencers
that
and
much of hard
information, which is information. And there are those like Kabir Bedi and others, Sushant Sareen, yourself, Uday Maurkar and Rajinder Kumar and many others who are calling it gutter journalism and saying devoid of facts is nothing but fabrication. So all of that is also happening. So people who will sample the video will also sample the truth and say, oh, is this all missing there? Was it present there or is it not present there? So the argument continues, but all of us agree on this part that this is propaganda and this is perhaps aimed at a particular design. Will it work? Will it fail like it has in the past? We'll have to see. I thank you all. Been very engaging discussion, but we've actually overshot time. Thank you so much. Rajinder ji had one point to make. He just raising his hands. Can we just go back quickly? Yes, Rajinder ji. Sir, 30 seconds. I'm way over time.
I just want to say that in 2002, 150 Hindus were stabbed, and more than 150 Hindus were killed in police firing. If it was state was involved, how Hindus were killed? In Delhi riots, not one non-Sikh was killed. Whereas in these riots, more than 150 Hindus were killed in police firing. So police was acting, police was doing its best too.
But this is all
This
not
part
part.
is
So
not
this is
highlighted
all.
by
This is not
anybody.
part of the docu-series. 2 trainfuls of Hindu Karsevaks were burnt and literally burnt alive. That will never be talked about. Hindus were also killed in police firing. Will not be talked about. Is this against just Narendra Modi or against Hindus and Hindustan, as Sushant Sareen said? We'll all think about it and we'll continue to speak about it in the coming days. Thank you very, very much. I have to wind up. We're going to take a very, very short break. When we come back, it's the pesky neighbor, Terroristan, which is running out of money, credibility. Beggar's bowl. That's what they got, the beggar's bowl. And nobody is willing to drop arms. And they are running out of change, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us.